During the Progressive Era, many new discoveries were made. One of these discoveries is the North Pole. With this discovery came a huge controversy on who explored it first. In 1909, two men both claimed to have discovered the North Pole. Who did it first? We still don't know. Frederick A. Cook and Robert E. Peary both described the North Pole in their books and explained the journey they took to get there. Frederick A. Cook was a doctor and an explorer. He set out to the North Pole in 1908 with two Eskimos. In his book, My Attainment of the North Pole, he explains what he and his men went through. Before Cook could even start his journey to the North Pole, he had to prepare many things. With the preparation, Cook encountered a new diet. This diet consisted of meat and fat with no sugar or salt. This included things like dried beef, raisins, and currants with a little sugar. Also, Cook encountered new inventions such as snowshoes. Cook also exchanged the idea of the sledge with dog harnesses. Once Cook was ready to start the journey, he encountered the harsh weather of the North Pole and learned to always sleep in an igloo because the winds are too strong. Once Cook got to the North Pole, he realized this. Bewildered, I realized all that I had suffered, all the pain of fasting, all the anguish of long weariness, and I felt like this was my reward. I had scaled the world, and I stood at the pole. Cook also climbed Mount Roosevelt after his discovery of the pole in 1908. On his way home from the exploration, Cook took a year to return, reason being he thought the North Pole would have an easter drift. In fact, the North Pole did have a drift, just westward. By the time Cook reappeared in society, everyone thought he was dead. Robert Edwin Peary was an American explorer. He, like Cook, set out for the North Pole in 1908. However, Peary had many attempts of trying to reach the North Pole. By 1908, Peary had tried to reach the North Pole 17 times. When Peary was ready to go for his 18th attempt, he had many connections with the Eskimos as well as many sponsors. One of his most famous sponsors was Kate Morris Jessup. Jessup was the president of the Peary Arctic Club. He was going to be going on the 18th attempt to the North Pole, but died before the trip had begun. His wife sent a vast amount of money for the trip. Peary named the last camp when traveling to the North Pole after Jessup. Peary chose his team in a very unique way. One of the members he chose was Matthew Henson. As Peary states in his book, The North Pole, its discovery in 1909 under the auspices of the Peary Arctic Club. Henson can handle a sledge better and is probably a better dog driver than any other man living except of the best Eskimo hunters themselves. Armed with a great team, Peary was ready for the trip. As he got to the land of Eskimos, many of them welcomed him back since he had become a friend after so many attempts. There, he and his group chose a few Eskimos to take on the journey with them. In addition, others started to make the sleds that they were going to take on the journey. Henson, who also wrote a book called A Negro Explorer at the North Pole, talked about having to make the sledges. Henson says this about the designs made by Peary. The sledges have a different pattern from those used heretofore, and it is expected that they will answer better than the Eskimo type of open-work sledge of earlier expeditions. Peary used his prior knowledge to exchange the ideas of the Eskimo sledge with the new models of the sledges for his exploration. While traveling to the North Pole, Peary and Henson both encountered some life-and-death experiences. For instance, Peary and Henson both fell into water because of thin ice and were saved because of their Eskimo colleagues. What we do know is that both Peary and Cook explored the North Pole. While exploring, they both encountered harsh weather, a new diet, new dialect, and of course, new ways of transportation. Peary and Cook also exchanged the idea of the sledge with different designs to help them reach the North Pole. The main question is still unanswered. Who explored the North Pole first? Because the North Pole is just ice, neither Peary nor Cook could leave a flag to prove they found the North Pole first. When this discovery was first made, people believed that Peary explored the North Pole first because of his many attempts beforehand, as well as his relationship with National Geographic. Also, it is proven that one of the Eskimos who was with Cook told everyone that Cook lied about going to Mount Roosevelt. As a result, Cook was considered untrustworthy. Because there is no physical or lasting evidence that completely proves who the first explorer to the North Pole was, the controversy continues on.